Okay. Well, we are live. Usually what we do in these cases is we wait a couple minutes to let people join, but since we have some housekeeping items to go through and the webinar is being recorded, I think we're going to get rolling directly, and people will join when they join and, catch up with us from there. Okay, so first things first, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sam. I am Payzar's head of marketing, and I'm here with Trevor, who is our COO and co-founder. Before we get started, I want to run through a couple housekeeping items. First, this session is being recorded. Like all of our webinars, we record all of them. We'll upload it to YouTube afterwards. So if you want to rewatch it at any point, if you want to share it with a colleague or a friend or your boss or whoever it is, you will be able to do that. Likewise, we will also share the slide deck that we're using today with you. Right, so you'll have access to both of those resources. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we want to make these sessions as interactive as possible. So you're welcome to ask questions at any point. If at any point in the presentation you have a question, you pop it in the chat that you'll see at the bottom of your screen or in the Q&A tab. Trevor and I will pick it up. We'll try to pick them up as we go along, and we're happy to just have, a back and forth, have a discussion about anything you want, okay? That's it with housekeeping. So with that out of the way, I think we could get into the content itself. So the first thing I want to talk, to start out today, what we're going to be talking about is threats and challenges payroll providers are facing in 2024 and beyond. We currently work with dozens of payroll providers, which range from 3 of the top 10 global accounting firms down to specialized HR outsourcing providers and local payroll bureaus and all kinds of outfits, basically. And through these engagements, we've seen that there's a very clear before and after in the partnerships that we have with them, right? And this has given us a very in-depth view of the payroll provider market and the challenges providers have to deal with, right? And the way we want to structure this discussion is talking about the 4 vectors that kind of articulate these common challenges. And then we'll share a case study and we'll talk about some of the desired outcomes. So we're going to be talking about the technology risk that payroll providers have to face. We're going to be talking about market consolidation. We're going to be talking about customer experience. And we're going to be talking about your employee experience also. And then after that, we'll get into the case studies and some solutions that we think, payroll providers can implement to address these challenges. So Trevor, why don't you kick things off now? Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Sam. So we think about the payroll industry. Payroll industry was, once upon a time, incredibly innovative. It was the first major business process to be fully automated with any kind of software, any kind of technology. So the payroll department was the first to adopt technology at scale. It was also very innovative in that it kind of invented the outsourced business delivery model. But somewhere along the line, it kind of got taken for granted a little bit. And I think those innovative roots got left behind. And in recent years, I think the payroll industry has been a little bit staid, but the rest of the world is moving on. So when you think about these, what are these kind of key risks that providers in the industry now face? I think top of them has to be information security, right? So information security, of course, globally we see a range of different data protection measures with associated fines and reputational risks that are being driven forward by, obviously legislation by governments at national or pan-national levels. How this then, from a payroll provider standpoint, manifests itself, I think, in terms of retaining customers and winning business, is that the barrier to stay in the game is just being raised all of the time. So, you will see RFPs, you will see customers in terms of their information security assessments of vendors before they contract with you, looking for things like ISO 27001. And, you need to be able to answer those information security questions properly. You need to be certified. And this, is not just for your own organization. ISO, controls extend into your chain of vendors as well. Now, key to managing information security risk is knowing where your data is. It's controlling the flow of data, knowing who has access to it, where is it stored, how is it backed up, how are the locations where it's stored and backed up, how are they physically secured, what is the power and utilities into those premises so they can stay functioning and all the rest. And these barriers go up and up and up all of the time. And information security kind of goes hand in hand with integration around data. So if we can integrate data in a better way, it tends to drive information security. So if you're operating in an environment where integration between the systems that you pull data from your customers, the systems which you use to calculate payroll, if there's lack of integration there, I think there's inherent data security risks, because guess what? Your data is being stored in different locations with more touch points maybe than you're aware of, and maybe more touch points than you actually need. But there's also another implication of lack of integration, is that there's a lot of manual effort then in moving data from your customer to calculate payroll to your payroll engines to get it calculated. And in that process, there often can be errors and mistakes, and that kind of has an implication for your employee experience as well, because your employees are operating maybe in a manual environment. Mistakes are made along the way, because guess what? We're human, and that injects heat into the customer, between your customer and your employee, which is probably unnecessary and can be avoidable. But like again, it is a fairly significant risk. And your customers are aware of this, and they're going to be demanding better integration, better tools from you. If we kick forward, then we think about automation. Automation just has a major competitive implication for you. And it's a major threat, right? Because if you want to achieve better customer experiences, if you want to retain your existing customers, a lack of automation restricts your growth, because you're just not competitive. It also directly hinders your competitiveness, because in a market maybe where that's highly competitive, some of the levers around your costs, etc., might mean your prices are unavoidably high for your business, but uncompetitive in the marketplace. So this has a major existential implication for your business over time. And then when we think about technology shifts, technology is moving on at a pace. And as I said at my introduction, the payroll industry used to be very, very innovative, and I think lost its way a little bit. So your customers are using not just the tools and the services that you provide, but they're in their working lives are seeing adjacent tools, adjacent services that they're consuming from other vendors that are moving along a pace. And we've all seen the move to AI in the last 12 to 18 months. So the question is, can you adopt some of these technologies? Do you have the capacity and the capability internally within your business to be able to bring them to bear to improve your service and improve your customer and employee experience? So for me, if I ask those questions, and if I think about the technology risks and threats to the industry today, and I ask these big questions around information security, integration, automation, and being able to stay abreast of technology shifts, are you being left behind, and how prepared are you in the face of some of these issues? So maybe if you wanted to skip on from there, Sam, what else is happening out there? So we have technology on one hand, major threats to your business there. On the other hand, then what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of consolidation in the market. We're seeing a lot of great payroll businesses being snapped up by leading providers. Either they're being snapped up to be part of a global play, or they're being snapped up to create greater scale in domestic markets. But if I look at the global payroll market, if I look at domestic payroll markets, there is just a lot of consolidation going on. And as we say here, if your business is being acquired, congratulations, you've done a great job. But there's two big issues then that remain when we think about market consolidation for those that aren't acquired or those that are in the market and thinking about building a business in this market. If you are now competing against a business that has acquired a lot more scale by buying revenues in from other payroll providers, they're going to have bigger budgets. They're going to have bigger teams. You're going to have product teams, you're going to have QA teams, IT operations teams that can figure out what to do technology, to go and get ISO certified to manage information security risks, that can figure out automation, productivity tools, that can figure out integration. So how are you going to compete in that market against that kind of scale if you haven't yet been acquired? And maybe even the bigger question is, if you are a business owner in this space, how do you then become acquired? And what are the things that these acquiring companies, when they come to run the rule over your business, will they look for? It's quite simple. They're going to look for a few key metrics initially to get interested in your business. You're going to look at your growth rates. So how do you compete? How do you win business? You're going to look at your retention. So of the business you win, how long do you hold on to it for? And then they're going to look at your underlying profitability. So this market consolidation piece comes back to some of those issues around customer experience, technology to deliver customer experience, the customer experience around the service that those customers gain from dealing with your people, and the employee experience. So for me, there's a lot going on in this space at the minute to be somewhat worried about in terms of technology and now market consolidation, and positioning yourself to be in the best possible shape if someone comes knocking at your door. And there could be ways in which you could better position yourself when that opportunity comes up. So if I think about the customer experience, the big question I think we need to ask ourselves is, what are your customers looking for, and how do they perceive your business? As I said earlier on, your customers aren't just buying your service. They're working in larger businesses that are seeing other tools that their colleagues are using. They're seeing other services that are being delivered, other value adds that vendors in adjacent spaces are giving to them. So, what's top of mind, I think, for a customer in this space? And I think automation integration are very, very hot at the moment, because I think what people are looking to do is to take those kind of those more data entry, those data manipulation type tasks, because they're listening to the same things that we're all listening to about how AI in the future is going to be brilliant, because technology is going to solve all of these data issues and make everyone's lives better. And they're going to ask you, how are you innovating your service to make their lives better? So hopefully what you're thinking about aligned to what your customers expect is, let's deliver some of this automation integration to simplify what the customer needs to do to interact with your business as a payroll service provider. So that, the basic requirements are, let's get payroll, the data from the customer in, payroll calculated and filed, keep everyone compliant. But you can start to shift your service, let the technology do the checking, let the technology do the integration and calculation and data flow. And you're then helping to move your service model towards interpreting what the data is telling you, so that you can give your customer a better value add. So if I was to think about maybe where the industry was a little while ago, it was probably perceived as a payroll services, look, you get me the data, give me the shoebox worth of data, I'll sort it out for you. And people were wowed with that kind of service. But I think things have certainly moved on. And what you need to ask yourself the question then is this how your customers are perceiving the service that they that they're receiving from you? Is there a perception that they get a value added service, they get interpretation, they get support and help around complex payroll matters? Is that the perception of what they bought from you? But the reality turns out that they're spending an awful lot of time in manual processes, pushing data backwards and forwards. When they see in other parts of their own businesses other vendors helping them with that. So, I think what we have here is a maybe provocative side to say we need to move on from maybe a 1990s approach to payroll because the world is changing, but also, your customer perception of what they're trying to buy from you and of what a payroll service provider should deliver has changed dramatically as well. So maybe it doesn't feel so cutting edge anymore.
I'm going to jump in here also, Trevor. And I think that from, what we've been talking about technology, we've been talking about customer experiences. I think what naturally follows from this is a discussion around commodification and differentiation, right? And I think this is really significant. This is a really significant challenge for payroll providers, and it's not talked about a lot, right? Payroll services are like any other service in the sense that they exist in a marketplace that is very competitive, right? And to win business, you need to set yourself apart somehow. And not a lot of companies are good at doing this, not only in payroll, like in general, right? Every service, every company, in every market, it turns out that most offerings are pretty similar to each other, right? There's a lot of market dynamics that play into this. And for most services, the difference between, company A, B, C, D, et cetera, it's not very big, right? This happens especially in very mature markets, and payroll is a mature market. Payroll services have been around for a long time, and there is this tendency over time towards homogenization, towards things becoming more and more similar to each other as companies optimize and improve, by looking at each other and stuff like that, right? So what we could say then is that payroll services are commodified, right? And what that means is that if you are a provider, you end up competing on price and you end up competing on timing, on being in the right place at the right time to win someone's business. You can control price, of course, and you can control timing to an extent, but these are not the factors that you want to be driving the growth of your business, right? You want your customers to choose you because your offering is better and because it's unique, right? And the way you accomplish this is by excelling in customer service, by having and by demonstrating better expertise, and by delivering a very differentiated customer experience, which in this context is heavily related to technology, right? We know this because we've spoken with hundreds of payroll providers, and it's not a criticism towards them. This is just a general trend that exists in the market. The majority of the market is not very high tech. The majority of the market is still doing things the old school way, right? So they're using lots of spreadsheets. Communication is handled by email. They have, some document sharing system, which can be Google Drive or Dropbox or Box, or it could be Microsoft Teams or something like that. Some of them will have payroll calendars on a physical whiteboard in their office, right? There's nothing wrong with this. This is just this is the way that the market functions right now, right? And what that means is that if you're a payroll provider, there's a huge opportunity here, because if you can deliver a much more modern, automated, streamlined customer experience by using technology, that automatically sets you apart from the majority of your competitors by a huge margin, right? So then the argument that is driving the buying decision is not, I am cheaper. It's, I'm going to automate critical steps of your payroll process. I'm going to deliver better quality data. I'm going to improve your compliance. I'm going to streamline communication and incident resolution, right? And if you're able to do that, if you're not just competing on price, if your offer is qualitatively different from the offering of your competitors, then you're much more differentiated and you have a winning argument that no one else has, basically.
So Sam, just on that, you mentioned something like the market is a mature market. Um, when we think about that, does that mean, or that there's a certain amount of complacency, or maybe put a different way, that it's a marketplace that's ripe for disruption in some way?
Yes, yes, definitely. No question about it. I mean, again, it's what I said earlier. I don't think it's not a criticism towards payroll providers, right? Markets evolve the way they do because there's just millions and millions of different factors that influence how businesses behave and stuff like that, right? But yeah, like as I said, we've spoken to hundreds of payroll providers. The vast majority of them are still doing things in a way that is distinctly low tech. So if you are one of the few people that are doing something that is very high tech, that is taking on that kind of disruptive role, then you are unique, by default. And I think that is something that, in any market, any company should try to pursue.
I think one of the points we need to, I suppose, touch on here is, just because a market might be mature, there's a certain amount of stability required of the payroll industry as well, because the benchmark is 100% right 100% of the time when it comes to calculating your customers' employees' payroll, right? So to an extent, it's an unforgiving um, place to be a service provider. Now, I wonder whether that kind of holds the industry back a little bit from saying, well, look, if it's working like this and I've set up my own internal operations, maybe in a low tech or highly manual way, I don't want to change it, because with change, the risk of change comes errors in the payroll process. I think what we're going to talk about a little bit later, Sam, in the course of the webinar, is how a payroll provider has adopted a technology stack in a way in which didn't compromise or didn't risk their current operations, but helped to elevate their standards and elevate their customer experience.
Yeah, exactly. Should we move on to the next thing
Sure,
then?
yeah. Okay, so the employee experience here in a service industry, we rely on our colleagues. Our colleagues are communicating with our customers every day. They're the people at the pointy end of delivering the service, and we know in the industry that hiring and retaining great staff is a problem. And I think we need to take hats off to the campaign that the Global Payroll Association is on at the moment, where they're really driving home a campaign of payroll as a career, and I think it's laudable. And while I think that is really good from an industry perspective to drive the profile, I also think that we need to look at how are we expecting our colleagues in payroll managed service roles to operate in 2024. Like, the job they do is very time pressured and time sensitive, right? You have weekly, fortnightly, bi-monthly, monthly deadlines. You have annual deadlines and busy periods around different filings and whatnot, and it's just relentless. So people are under a lot of pressure. Now, heaped upon that then is a lack of tooling, where the kind of work people are doing could be automated, right? Where the software probably do some of those tasks more accurately and take a lot of that checking, manual data wrangling and manipulation off our colleagues' desks and allow them to deliver better service to our customers. The issue is they're at the coalface then of when things go wrong, when the existing tooling or processing in the managed service payroll environment goes wrong. They're the people that have to face up to the customer, that have to, work late, maybe to rectify errors in payroll, and we know they do heroic jobs for us. They naturally customers are going to feel a degree of irritation, or maybe in some cases unreasonable expectation in how situations can be corrected and rectified in like tough time frames. And your staff then they get it in the neck. And maybe they have a less than pleasant work experience with some of our customers, who in turn we have to recognize are under pressure themselves because they're facing the employees who have been potentially paid incorrectly. So there's a lot that we need to take a look at to say, how can we enrich and how can we use technology to enrich the lives of the people delivering services to our customers, to create more interesting interactions with customers, to reduce maybe the level of manual intervention, improve the tools and the professional experience that they're having on a day-to-day basis, so that they can really drive a superior service relationship between your business and your customers, and reduce this overall attrition. Because as knowledge walks out the door, that is problematic, because that IP is not coming back in. And it also puts you under pressure then, because you're expecting your existing team that might be short-staffed to deliver more and more, and you need technology to help with that. So I think this employee experience is something that we really need to be attentive to, and we really need to look at reasons to drive both efficiency but also higher employee engagement as well.
Yeah. I would just like to emphasize that all of these kind of issues, or these, these different areas that we're talking about, they don't exist in a vacuum, right? They're all part of a whole, basically. Your business, the different areas of your business and how you engage with customers, technology, how your employees function, all that kind of stuff. These are not different silos that you can address individually. There are different levers you can pull to improve them, but the goal is an overall goal. It's a high level goal that is kind of encompassing, which is, how can I drive profitability? How can I drive overall business growth, right? And that's kind of what we tried to paint here, right? So if you put yourself in a position where you have stronger technology, and the technology is through automation, through a standardization of processes, through improved communication, through streamlined, document sharing, data checking, et cetera, all of these things are feeding into all the other parts of your business. And all of that ends up cascading down to the level where you have a differentiated offering, you have better employee experience, that converts into, that results in better experience for your customers, which means that it's easier to acquire those customers. It's easier to retain them once you have acquired them. It drives up efficiency, et cetera, et cetera.
Listen, I think if anyone followed any of the Net Promoter information, or they've looked at that Net Promoter score system in the past, all of the literature is there, the evidence is there, and it's really compelling that happier customers are cheaper to serve. So a happier customer, cheaper to serve, a happier customer, easier to deal with, a better employee experience. So 100%, Sam, these items are all interrelated. But if you get the balance right, if you put the right tools in place, right processes in place, right people in place, it surely drops to the bottom line, and maybe starts to turn you into the acquisition target, so that business owners and shareholders get a return on the fantastic businesses that they've built over a number of years.
Yeah.
So if I think about where Payzar kind of sits in these I suppose this very dynamic kind of external threat landscape. So you have technology, you have the customer experience, employee experience, you have the market dynamics in terms of your competitive threats, acquisitions and scales, scale, etc. Where does Payzar fit in to this? And our platform, we've built it to be very open. We've built it to solve problems on both the customer and the provider side, right? To help drive experiences for both. So I suppose, simply put, we help from the time data originates on the customer side from their various systems to support pulling data, transforming data into a format that you, the payroll provider, can consume to drive accurate payroll. We integrate that into an operation control workflow that manages communication between customer and provider so that you can get visibility about where is a customer's particular payroll at a particular point in time. You can respond to the service needs of your customers for unplanned events like one of your service team members being out sick or on an unplanned holiday, that you're able to manage workload across your service teams to be able to deliver that kind of customer experience, to give the customer the kind of tools that they want to interact with, the visibility that they want to see on a payroll process, to drive automation around data validation, making sure payroll is right first time, joiners, leavers, gross net validation, variance analysis, error detection, and input to output checking through the process. No code GL integration to be able to generate general ledger journal entry output in the format that customers want at the end of that payroll process. And because we've all of the data in one place, we're able to drive reporting and analytics across your customer's payroll landscape. And again, this is a sort of platform that allows you to drive some value add and to stay in control of the payroll process. And ultimately, as well, at the end of the payroll journey, we got to think about the experience of the ultimate customer of payroll, who's the employee, and being able to give access to employees to their pay slips, but and as a service provider, to control the release and distribution of those, and as the customer, to ensure that employees have access to their employee information as and when they want. So the Payzar platform, I think, helps those businesses to put in place a solution that's ISO 27001 certified. So you're adding a vendor to the mix that has strong information security credentials, cloud hosted, modern platform with those tools to drive things like automation, integration, drive down your information security risk, and to drive up both customer and employee experience. So, Sam, do you want to talk about any of this, or do you want to talk about the?
I just want to add one thing.
Sure.
I want to add one thing before we move on. The point I would add to that is I would say, like, think back to what we were talking about earlier about commodification, about differentiation, and about customer experience, and think about that in a practical sense, right? So if I am your customer and I am using you to process my payroll, think about how I experience the service if I'm using a traditional provider, which is doing things kind of the old school way that we talked about, which is spreadsheets, email, some cloud storage, phone calls, manual, back and forth, et cetera, et cetera. Think of how that feels to me as the customer versus how does it feel to me as the customer if I'm using something like this, where I have an interface in the cloud where I manage everything. My payroll calendar is there. My data upload goes through there. My communication goes through there. There is automation built into it that is reducing my workload in data processing and preparation and stuff like that, right? The customer experience is very different. The way I experience the service is very different. If, as a provider, I'm going out I have a sales meeting with a customer and I'm pitching my service to them, the way I pitch the service and the value I can deliver, it looks very different to the customer, right? So there is a night and day difference here between the old school style of delivering payroll services versus this kind of much more modern technology-enabled approach that you can use if you have a platform like this in place. And I think that's a good point to move, it's a good moment to move on and talk about an example that we have here, which is a case study we did with one of our customers, right? So as I said, we work with lots of payroll providers. We work with 3 of the top 10 global accounting firms in the world who are using our platform to deliver payroll to their customers. We work with specialist HR outsourcing firms, and we work with local providers. Paycheck Plus is a local payroll provider that operates in Ireland and the UK. they're quite large. They have a few hundred customers themselves, so they're pretty big. They're delivering payroll to thousands and thousands of employees every month. And they're very well regarded. They have very high NPS score ratings. They've won numerous awards for quality of service, right? So they're very good at their job. We've been working with them since 2020, and the way the relationship started, the way they came to us, because they realized that they had an issue with scalability of their business, right? So they had built a very solid business, but they hit a bottleneck. They hit a bottleneck because if they wanted to grow more, their very analog manual processes were creating an issue. There was a point where their scalability was being impacted because their processes were inefficient. And they said, we need to bring technology into the mix. We need to find a way to digitize our delivery of service so we can continue to add more customers, so we can scale up our operations without quality of service being impacted, right? So that was the challenge they had to face. We had an engagement with them. We had, some conversations. We showed them the platform. There was a lot of, we built a relationship up with them. And what they decided to do is to work with us, to partner with us, and to implement our platform and to use it as a payroll bureau management platform upon which they deliver service to their customers, right? The reason they wanted to work with us is because we brought them this modern technology-enabled way of delivering payroll services, and we allowed them to white label it so it looks like a product that is theirs to their customers, right? So they have payroll process management, they have payroll calendars in the cloud, they can manage all of their different clients through the same platform, through the same interface, right? They have no-code reporting, all the things that Trevor just talked about now when we were showing kind of the two sides, the client-facing side and the back-end facing side, right? As a result of that, what they have seen is that their NPS scores have gone up. They have continued to grow the business very aggressively, in fact, right? They were able to move 40 to 50 client payrolls onto the platform per month on their own without support from our implementation team, because the platform is developed in a way so that you can manage it entirely autonomously. It's no code, et cetera, right? So they migrated their entire customer, they migrated their entire customer base onto Payzar in a period of about 8 months, more or less, with very, very minimal support. The customer service they can deliver to their customers got much better because they have a central communication hub to manage communication, file transfers, et cetera, right? And they've seen big improvements in internal KPIs. So there's an example, which is out of 20 key customers that they looked at, 90% of them have shorter processing times now than they did before working with Payzar. Why? Because variance reporting, because of data analyzer, automating the checking of the data, because they have better coordination and communication. And the other thing that is a big highlight is that since they started working with us in 2020, they have doubled their book of business. So the business is twice as large now as it was then. And comparatively, they are investing 30% less resources. So they are doing a lot more with significantly less. And if you look at that from the perspective of profitability, which is what we've been talking about, that is a huge win for them. Couple other interesting things. During the migration onto the platform, they lost 0 clients. I think it's important to call that out, because if you are a service provider of any kind and you make drastic changes to your delivery, to how you deliver service, you're going to lose something on the way. That's just what happens, right? It's very, very typical. It happens to all kinds of businesses in all kinds of sectors. Whenever you make changes to your service, you will lose someone, right? That didn't happen to them. They lost 0 clients over that period of 8 months that we discussed. So they've retained all the ones they had, and then they've gained a lot of new ones. And Trevor, maybe to wrap up, is there something else you would like to add about this?
I think, I think it's one of those ones that I think that last slide we looked at goes back to the point around, you want to keep your customers, and on one hand, you don't want to introduce anything that might disrupt that relationship. You don't want to introduce, especially in payroll, because the benchmark is 100% right all of the time. You don't introduce any risk to service interruption or anything that compromises that. On the other hand, if you don't introduce some change, your customers will, because they're going to talk to your competitors. Customers are going to, be in the market, and at some stage, maybe not today, maybe not in 6 months, but at some stage, you're going to have an internal change, and that'll introduce a new service provider. And that could just be that someone who, that you had the relationship in that business moves on to another business, and their replacement replaces you, because maybe you're giving them the excuse to do so by not innovating your process and not serving them in a way that they believe they now need to be served. So I think it can be that fear of change or fear of migration of your customer base can be like a very, very difficult anchor to remove. On the other hand, if you don't do it, I think for sure there'll be an event that will allow one of your competitors to unseat you in that customer account. So for me, I think there's I don't know, something I read once upon a time. If you want to survive, you got to disrupt yourself first. So maybe the thing for everyone to do is to think about those big threats that we as Payzar, who are dealing with both sides of the industry, with direct clients and also with payroll providers in the industry, that we see as kind of the mega trends in our industry, or the threats that are looming on the horizon around technology, employee experience, the customer experience, and the market dynamics of acquisition and the corporate actions that are happening around us all of the time. That now is the time to get yourself ready and to face down those threats and put yourself in a position to deliver really what ultimately matters, which is a really, really great service for your customers.
Yeah. I think I'll end. There's one thing that we could also mention here that we haven't talked about, which is stickiness, right? I think the key, if you can deliver this kind of customer experience that is much more that is much more high tech, that has automation involved, that has all these kind of, methods of streamlining processes and stuff like that. What you're doing is you're making your service very sticky. Your customer has to have a very, very, very persuasive reason to leave, right? If you're delivering all of that to them. If you're competing with your competitors based on price, you're not as sticky as you could be, right? Because it's as Trevor said, maybe the head of payroll at the company leaves, they bring in someone new. This person has some particularities about how they want some things done. They already know some other providers, and they go to them and say, hey, I'm maybe looking for a new provider. And they say, oh, I'll give you a discount, and that's it, right? And then maybe you have to undercut yourself to keep them, that kind of thing. That's not a position you want to be in. You want to be in a position where your service stands, on its own, basically. So if you can make your service very sticky, that's going to increase your retention by a huge amount. And of course, that's going to improve your bottom line. It's going to improve your top line, everything. So yeah. Trevor, anything else from you?
I think from my perspective, I think that's it. I'm not sure if there's any questions out there, Sam, that we need to address.
Yeah. If you have any questions, you can feel free to pop them in the chat, in the Q&A. We'll answer them. If not, then we will wrap up the session here, and we will give you back 15 minutes on the hour. Okay. I don't see any questions coming in. So in that case, I think we'll wrap things up here. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this was informative. I hope it was interesting. I hope it gave you, stuff to think about. If you would like to know more about what we're doing and how we're working with different payroll providers, we'd love to chat further. So feel free to send us a message. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find Trevor on LinkedIn also. You could just send us a message and say, hey, I'd like to know more. Oh, wait, there is something in the chat. Oh, okay. Will you be hosting more webinars on these topics? Yeah, potentially. Yeah, we will. And we're not going to do these, maybe not next month, but yeah, over the course of the year, there will be more webinars. We will talk about these topics related to payroll providers, payroll technology, and stuff like that. So yes, definitely. Okay. What was I saying? Oh yeah, I was saying, if you want to find out more, just reach out to us, send us a message on LinkedIn. I will be sending you an email with the video recording and the slide deck, so you will have access to that. And yeah, we'd love to chat, get to know you, and just share a little bit more if you're interested. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.